Morning, friends. Chapter 19, The Prophet. Shipmates, have you shipped in that ship? Queequeg and I had just left the Pequod and were sauntering away from the water, for the moment each occupied in his own thoughts, when the above words were put to us by a stranger who, pausing before us, levelled his massive forefinger at the vessel in question. He was but shabbily apparelled in faded jacket and patched trousers, a rag of a black handkerchief investing his neck. A confluent smallpox had in all directions flowed over his face, and left it like the complicated ribbed bed of a torrent when the rushing waters have been dried up. "Have you shipped dinner?" he repeated. "You mean the ship Pequod, I suppose," said I, trying to gain a little more time for an uninterrupted look at him. "Aye, the Pequod, that ship there," he said, drawing back his whole arm and then rapidly shoving it straight out from him, with the fixed bayonet of his pointed finger darted full at the object. "Yes," said I, "we have just signed the articles. Anything down there about your souls?" "About what?" "Oh, perhaps you haven't got any," he said quickly. "No matter, though. I know many chaps that haven't got any. Good luck to 'em, and they are all the better off for it. A soul is a sort of a fifth wheel to a wagon." "What are you jabbering about, shipmate?" said I. "He's got enough, though, to make up for all deficiencies of that sort in other chaps," abruptly said the stranger, placing a nervous emphasis upon the word he. "Queequeg," said I, "let's go. This fellow has broken loose from somewhere. He's talking about something and somebody we don't know." "Stop!" cried the stranger. "You said true. You haven't seen Old Thunder yet, have you?" "Who's Old Thunder?" said I, again riveted with the insane earnestness of his manner. "Captain Ahab." "What! The captain of our ship, the Pequod?" "Aye, among some of us old sailor chaps he goes by that name. You haven't seen him yet, have you?" "No, we haven't. He's sick, they say, but is getting better, and we will all right again before long." "And we'll be all right again before long." "All right again before long," laughed the stranger, with a solemnly derisive sort of laugh. "Look ye, when Captain Ahab is all right, then this left arm of mine will be all right, not before." "What do you know about him?" "What did they tell you about him? Say that." "They didn't tell much of anything about him, only I've heard that he's a good whale hunter and a good captain to his crew." That's true, yes, both true enough, but you must jump when he gives an order. Step and growl, growl and go, that's the word with Captain Ahab. But nothing about that thing had happened to him off Cape Horn long ago, when he lay like dead for 3 days and nights. Nothing about that deadly scrimmage with the Spaniard afore the altar in Santa. Heard nothing of that, eh? Nothing about the silver calabash he spat into? Nothing about his losing his leg last voyage, according to the prophecy? Didn't you hear a word about them matters and something more, eh?" "No, I don't think you did. How could you? Who knows it? Not all Nantucket, I guess. But, hows'ever, mayhap you've heard tell about the leg, and how he lost it. Aye, you have heard of that, I dare say. Oh, yes, that everyone knows about. I mean they know he's only one leg, and that a Parmacetti took the other off." "My friend," said I, "what all this gibberish of yours is about I don't know, and I don't much care, for it seems to me that you must be a little damaged in the head. But if you are speaking of Captain Ahab of that ship there, the Pequod, then let me tell you that I know all about the loss of his leg." "All about it, eh? Sure you do? All?" "Pretty sure." With finger pointed and eye levelled at the Pequod, the beggar-like stranger stood a moment, as if in a troubled reverie, and then started a little and turned and said, "You've shipped, have ye? Name's down on the papers. Well, well, what's signed is signed, and what's to be will be, and then again, perhaps it won't be after all. Anyhow, it's all fixed and arranged already, and some sailors or other must go with him, I suppose, as well these men as any other. God pity 'em. Mornin' to you, shipmates, mornin'. The ineffable heavens bless ye. I'm sorry I stopped you." "Look here, friend," said I, "if you have anything important to tell us, out with it, but if you're only trying to bamboozle us, you are mistaken in your game. That's all I have to say." And it said very well, and I like to hear a chap talk up that way. You are just the man for him, the likes of ye. Morning to you, shipmates, morning. Oh, when you get there, tell 'em I've concluded not to make one of 'em." "Oh, my dear fellow, you can't fool us that way. You can't fool us. It is the easiest thing in the world for a man to look as if he had a great secret in him." "Morning to you, shipmates, morning." "Morning it is," said I. "Come along, Queequeg. Let's leave this crazy man. But stop. Tell me your name, will you?" "Elijah." "Elijah," thought I, and we walked away, both commenting, after each other's fashion, upon that ragged old sailor, and agreed that he was nothing but a humbug, trying to be a bugbear. But we had not gone perhaps above 100 yards when chancing to turn a corner and looking back as I did so, who should be seen but Elijah following us, though at a distance. Somehow the sight of him struck me so that I said nothing to Queequeg of his being behind, but passed on with my comrade, anxious to see whether the stranger would turn the same corner that we did. He did, and then it seemed to me that he was dogging us, but with what intent I could not for the life of me imagine. This circumstance, coupled with his ambiguous, half-hinting, half-revealing, shrouded sort of talk, now begat in me all kinds of vague wonderments and half-apprehensions, and all connected with the Pequod, and Captain Ahab, and the leg he had lost, and the Cape Horn fit, and the silver calabash, and what Captain Peleg had said of him when I left the ship the day previous, and the prediction of the squaw Tistig, and the voyage we had bound ourselves to sail, and 100 other shadowy things. I was resolved to satisfy myself whether this ragged Elijah was really dogging us or not, and with that intent crossed the way with Queequeg, and on that side of it retraced our steps. But Elijah passed on, without seeming to notice us. This relieved me, and once more, and finally as it seemed to me, I pronounced him in my heart a humbug. Chapter 20. All astir. A day or two passed, and there was great activity aboard the Pequod. Not only were the old sails being mended, but new sails were coming on board, and bolts of canvas, and coils of rigging. In short, everything betokened that the ship's preparations were hurrying to a close. Captain Peleg seldom or never went ashore, and sat in his wigwam, keeping a sharp lookout upon the hands. Bildad did all the purchasing and providing at the stores, and the men employed in the hold and on the rigging were working till long after nightfall. On the day following Queequeg signing the articles, word was given at all the inns where the ship's company were stopping that their chest must be on board before night, and there was no telling how soon the vessel might be sailing. So Queequeg and I got down our traps, resolving, however, to sleep ashore till the last. But it seems that they always give very long notices in these cases, and the ship did not sail for several days. But no wonder, there was a good deal to be done, and there was no telling how many things to be thought of before the Pequod was fully equipped. Everyone knows what a multitude of things, beds, saucepans, knives and forks, shovels and tongs, napkins, nutcrackers, and what not, are indispensable to the business of housekeeping. Just so with whaling, which necessities a 3 years' housekeeping upon the wide ocean, far from all grocers, costermongers, doctors, bakers, and bankers. And though this also holds true of merchant vessels, yet not by any means to the same extent as with whalemen. For besides the great length of the whaling voyage, the numerous articles peculiar to the prosecution of the fishery, and the impossibility of replacing them at the remote harbors usually frequented, it must be remembered that of all ships, whaling vessels are the most exposed to accidents of all kinds, and especially to the destruction and loss of the very things upon which the success of the voyage most depends. Hence the spare boats, spare spars, and spare lines and harpoons, and spare everything, almost, but a spare captain and duplicate ship. At the period of our arrival at the island, the heaviest storage of the Pequod had been almost completed, comprising her beef, bread, water, fuel, and iron hoops and staves. But as before hinted, for some time there was a continual fetching and carrying on board of divers odds and ends of things, both large and small. Chief among those who did this fetching and carrying was Captain Bildad's sister, a lean old lady of a most determined and indefatigable spirit, but withal very kind-hearted, who seemed resolved that if she could help it, nothing should be found wanting in the Pequod, after only fairly getting to sea. At one time she would come on board with a jar of pickles for the steward's pantry, another time with a bunch of quills for the chief mate's deck, where he kept his log, a third time with a roll of flannel for the small of someone's rheumatic back. Never did any woman better deserve her name, which was Charity, Aunt Charity, as everybody called her, and like a sister of charity did this charitable Aunt Charity bustle about hither and thither, ready to turn her hand and heart to anything that promised to yield safety, comfort, and consolation to all on board a ship in which her beloved brother Bildad was concerned, in which she herself owned a score or two of well-saved dollars. But it was startling to see this excellent-hearted Quakeress coming on board, as she did the last day, with a long old ladle in one hand and a still longer whaling lance in the other. Nor was Bildad himself, not Captain Peleg, at all backward. As for Bildad, he carried about with him a long list of articles needed, and at every fresh arrival down went his mark opposite that article upon the paper. Every once in a while Peleg came hobbling out of his whalebone den, roaring at the men down the hatchways, roaring up at the riggers at the masthead, and then concluded by roaring back into his wigwam. During these days of preparation, Queequeg and I often visited the craft, and as often I asked about Captain Ahab and how he was, and when he was going to come on board the ship. To these questions they would answer that he was getting better and better, and was expected aboard every day. Meantime the two captains, Peleg and Bildad, could attend to everything necessary to fit the vessel for the voyage. If I had been downright honest with myself, I would have seen very plainly in my heart that I did but half fancy being committed this way to so long a voyage, without once laying my eyes on the man who was to be the absolute dictator of it, so soon as the ship sailed out upon the open sea. But when a man suspects any wrong, it sometimes happens that if he be already involved in the matter, he insensibly strives to cover up his suspicions even from himself. And much this way it was with me. I said nothing and tried to think nothing. At last it was given out that sometime next day the ship would certainly sail. So next morning Queequeg and I took a very early start. Have a good day, friends.